Hi, welcome everyone. This is PKU Snap in a Chat, a Q&A panel with some amazing PKU teens and young adults. And we welcome you to join us today. My name is Amy Oliver, and I am the current president of the National PKU Alliance, and I am also the mom to two children with PKU. So let's start out by having some introductions so you know who we're chatting with today. Allie, why don't you go ahead and start?
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm 19 and I'm from Irmo, South Carolina, and I have PKU.
Thanks, Allie. Brittany?
Hi, my name is Brittany Holmes. I am 34. I live in Connecticut. I have PKU, and I also am a nurse practitioner in genetics, so I see PKU patients as well.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Lilly?
Hi, my name is Lilly DeCamilla, and I'm 27 years old, and I am from Maine.
Awesome. Connor?
Hi, I am Connor Brown. I'm from Eau Claire. I'm 15, Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Thanks, Connor. And Matt, round us out.
So my name is Matt Mounger. I'm the old one of the bunch at 40, and I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Thank you all for joining us. So our format today is we're going to have some questions that the panelists are going to answer, and then we will open it up for a live Q&A. So we'll start with question 1. So when do you usually tell people that you have PKU, and how do you explain it to them? And we'll start with Lilly.
Okay, so for me, it actually varies depending on who the person is. If the situation is kind of immediate where they need to know information, then like maybe at a restaurant or something, I might say something very small, just enough information that they need to know, because that's my personal style. But then if I really want people to know more about me, it's like a friendship, relationship, whatever. I think that takes time, and it's not like you need to tell everybody everything all at once. It can be over time as well, because sometimes it's overwhelming for you and the other person. The whole thing can be overwhelming. So I think taking your time and really just feeling comfortable with the information is what I do. But then in restaurant situations, it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm sort of like a vegan or something small. That's what I typically do.
Great. Matt, why don't you jump in?
Sure, absolutely. And I will start by saying the answer to this for me has changed over the years because I am on Palynziq. But like Lilly, previously, restaurant is always a quicker explanation. It's great to hear she said vegan, because my fast approach is a not by choice vegan is what I call myself. And throwing not by choice usually extends the conversation a little bit longer. But and then so it's usually at restaurants. It's usually when food is related. I would intentionally, when I was younger, try and avoid the conversation as much as I could, but got more comfortable having that conversation over time and figured out ways to say it. And I do go into a little more detail now. You kind of get a routine down of what you say and how to say it and what people respond to. And so the not by choice vegan is kind of how I started. And if it went more into that, which it usually did, I went into a little more detail explaining PKU in a way they would understand it. So I can't handle a lot of protein is usually how it starts, and then goes into that from there. So
Great, thank you. Allie?
I agree with Lilly. It really just depends on the situation, but most of the time I will try to give a full length explanation of what it is, because I enjoy having people know that, because a lot of the times in like biology textbooks, it's just kind of like, it causes mental retardation. All right, see ya. And they don't actually meet someone with PKU who can thrive under the right diet. They don't understand like what can really happen if you're someone with PKU. So I do like to kind of give them the whole spiel about it whenever I can. But in a situation where they're not going to understand it, like recently I had to explain what PKU was to a kid, and I was just like, oh, my body doesn't like protein, so I don't eat things with that. And I left it there. But if it's like a quick situation, I usually go with the whole, yeah, I'm vegan, because, you know, it's just easier.
Thanks. Connor, how about you?
All right, so sometimes I don't even have to tell them at all. Like, if I'm at like a restaurant, I'll just order something that I can have usually, and they won't think twice about it. But like, if I'm like eating something that's totally different and everyone else is eating like the same thing, I'll just say like, oh, there's like an eating thing that I have for medical reasons and all that. So, yeah, you get used to it after a
Simple.
while.
Okay, and Brittany?
So I'll start off by saying, like Matt, I also am on Palynziq now. So things look a little different than they used to, but I would say that everyone that is, you know, close to my life or a part of my life definitely knows. And it's something that, like Allie, I do like to educate people on. So I do like to talk about it and do like to describe it. But, you know, obviously when I first meet them, or if it comes up because we're around food, you know, I'll start by a general explanation, like my body, you know, is unable to appropriately process one of the amino acids in protein called phenylalanine, so that's why I have to be on a restricted diet. I have used the term forced vegan before as well, something similar to Matt, to kind of help people better understand. But yeah, I think pretty much everyone that's going to be, you know, part of my life that's not just someone I'm going to meet briefly, knows a lot about it, and you know, knows currently that now I'm on Palynziq and that things look a little different. Obviously everyone was very excited when I was able to eat new foods, but that's typically what I would do. I usually tell almost everyone, unless it's, you know, someone that I'm not going to see again, and it doesn't come up.
Great, thank you. So we'll move to question 2, which is, what symptoms do you notice when your Phe levels are higher? And, or is there something that other people notice before you do? So Matt, let's start with you on this one.
Sure, and a lot of these come from prior Palynziq again, and it's you know, the ones that I experienced were temper. You know, my temper might flare up a little bit. Headaches were the kind of the physical thing for me. I would get a lot of headaches, and when my Phe level would go up, and then attention was kind of one of the things that would be an issue for me. And so I usually knew when I was eating too much, so I would just slow it down. Honestly, was kind of how I manage it, and increase and try and take more formula. It was when I was getting high levels, I mean, I was fully aware of what I was doing. It was all intentional. So I sometimes even anticipated certain symptoms coming on because I knew it was coming. So that was sometimes the case. You know, as far as somebody else noticing, what's interesting is when I met my wife and she had to explain PKU to her quickly. You know, if we ever got in an argument or had a question, she goes, "Is your Phe level high? Is your Phe level high?" So, you know, we played that for a little while, but so she could notice from time to time. She early on did a little quicker than normal, but yeah. She would notice every once in a while. My mom growing up can notice every once in a while. And it was just more my attention span and attitude, really.
Thank you. Allie?
Yeah, my mom in the past has expressed that I get more irritable. I didn't used to notice anything, but since I've been in college and like I've been very cognizant of my levels and messing up a lot more because I'm on my own, I've noticed the fogginess and the inability to recall things. That's like very prevalent all the time. And I don't notice attention as much, but I am also diagnosed with ADHD. So I think that goes hand in hand and just really doesn't help each other.
And how about you, Brittany?
So like Matt, I think it's definitely different now. Obviously, my fee is pretty well controlled. So it's been a while since I've had a higher fee level. I did have fee levels last year when I had COVID that were at the very upper end of the range. So that was kind of the highest they had been in a while. And I definitely felt it, I felt the difference. But obviously I have experience with high fee levels prior to Palynziq as well, especially, when younger, that high school and college years, probably the toughest. And I would definitely notice fatigue. I would notice concentration. So when I was in school, the concentration and just better performance on tests were definitely noticeable if my fee levels were under better control versus when they were not. Family members, so my mom would definitely be able to notice sometimes before I would, because she would say I would be more cranky towards her, mood changes. So she would kind of ask me like, have you had your formula today, or have you been eating too much? Or, she would notice often pretty quickly. So those were probably the most significant things that I would get. And then also headaches I would get as well.
Okay, Connor, how about you?
Well, for me at least, it's almost like you're like really tired, like you just woke up, but you're not like exhausted or wanting to just go to sleep. You just like, you're like, it's just, you're like in like a confusion sort of, and you can't really put together like deep, coherent thought. It's like just hard to concentrate on anything.
And Lily?
I agree with a lot of what was said for myself. Personally, I feel a lot of fatigue, headaches, and I haven't really heard this one as common as some other things, but for me, I actually like get tongue-tied where like my speech is not as good. And that's actually something like one of my friends has said before. She's like, you're talking weird, like you're not saying things right. Have you had your formula? Have you had something higher? And so I haven't heard that a lot from other people, but that's something that I experienced personally. I don't know if I deal with anger, but my side of things normally goes more to like sadness and anxiety. But yeah, overall, I think that family and friends can tell if I seem more tired or lethargic. And I definitely have an issue with not being able to think clearly or remember things, which can be really frustrating for me, because I'll like look back in my, in my head, I'll look back to like the other day or a memory or something and be like, oh my gosh, I can't remember that. And it's very frustrating for me. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I really try to keep my levels low, because I want to have good memories and remember lots of fun things. So those are some of the biggest symptoms that I feel when I get my high levels.
Thank you all for sharing. It's really interesting to hear everyone's experience. So question 3, what would you say to a new parent with a baby who was just diagnosed with PKU? What advice would you have for them? So Allie, let's start with you.
It's not the end of the world. I know every textbook makes it seem that way, but there are a bunch of ways that your child can live a very happy and healthy life if you put them on a diet. And the biggest piece of advice that I would say for parents of someone with a PKU child is, while you're making sure that they're on diet, make sure you don't restrict food or comment on their weight or give them any sort of complex with food that they're going to have on top of their PKU. Like they don't need an eating disorder on top of the fact that they can't even eat like 80% of the food out there, period. Like your relationship with food is already very strained, and you don't want to add like calories on top of protein, because that will absolutely wreck you.
Thank you. Connor, how about you?
When PKU is well managed, taken care of, your child is going to turn out just fine and live as happy of a life as anyone else.
And Brittany?
I would say, and this is something I say to families a lot, I know it's a lot to take in initially, of course, but don't forget to treat your child like a normal child. I think, one of the most important things that my parents did for me, and this would be advice that I give as well, is, obviously, like Allie said, PKU does need to be treated. And, yes, there may be some challenges with that. But, treated appropriately, you can have a completely normal life. And that was the approach my parents took, was that, my life is going to just be normal. It's not holding me back from anything. PKU doesn't define me. It's a part of me. It's something that, I need to manage, but there's so much more to me than PKU, and I can still be a completely normal child, adult, accomplish all the same goals that I wanted to, actually even different goals, since obviously PKU led me in the direction that I'm in. But that would be, I think, one of the biggest pieces of advice I would have is, making sure that, you don't have your child see PKU as something that holds you back, because it does not have to hold you back at all.
Great. Lilly?
I agree with everything that's been said, but I also think that I know this might sound strange, but it's a great time to have PKU. In all of history, this is the best time if you're going to have a baby with PKU. This is the best time, because things have only gotten exponentially more manageable. So that's very exciting. But as your kid is young and growing, I think one of the biggest things that my mom specifically did for me was she empowered me through knowledge and through how to take care of my PKU. And from a very young age, I was in the kitchen helping her. I was measuring out my formula. I was helping with blood tests. I was doing all of those things to make sure that when I became an adult, it wasn't like, oh, what am I doing? Like, it was just something that was very normal and already incorporated into my life. And so when I went to college, I went very confidently, and it was really cool, because I know that there are other people. I have many friends with PKU who I am in touch with all around the country, and that wasn't necessarily the case for them, and it was a very overwhelming time for them. So I think that trying to help as much as you can for them to learn as much as possible while they're at home in the home with you is going to really help them in their future endeavors with their PKU management.
Great. And Matt, you want to round us out on this question?
Well, they've covered this topic pretty good. So I will throw one more thing in there that Lilly touched on a little bit. And that is, one of the things that I missed out on was I never really talked to anybody with PKU till I was in my 30s, really. So I wasn't around anybody else. Now, I felt empowered to do I felt all the things that were said earlier. But that was one component I think I missed out on. And I think a support group, there's so many different ways to get connected. And that's one thing I didn't do when I was younger. Even just as simple as a Facebook group, or, there's a group here in Oklahoma that gets together every couple of weeks, or not weeks, that's a little frequent, but every so often. And just knowing those that, being able to talk to others that are going through the exact same thing that you are is huge. And that's one thing I missed out. And you can talk to parents all the time, and I don't mean this in any mean way, but parents they are there to help, and they are a very big support system, but there's still little things that they're not fully going to understand that the kids are going to go through. And so it does help for to set up little relationships that they might be able to have, and talk to others with those others that have PKU as well. And with the first group that I finally connected with, we started making PKU jokes that nobody else would understand. So it was just fun. It's just a fun thing to do, and it just they're now some of my best buds, and I text them when I have questions all the time. So I think a good support system, even inside and outside the family, is good.
Thank you. I can say as a parent, I wish I would have met all of you back in those early days of a diagnosis. It's really amazing to hear, and mostly just reassuring, right, for those new parents who are facing something that's so unknown and, of course, never heard of before. So thank you for that. Okay, question number 4. What are your tips for managing PKU when attending social gatherings and eating out at restaurants? And Brittany, why don't we have you lead this one up?
Sure. So one of the things I think that's important is to, get comfortable with asking for modifications. Don't be shy about, asking for something that is important for your health. So, when going out to restaurants, I think also these days there's a lot more understanding and acceptance of dietary, different dietary needs. So, I don't think there's really that stigma that maybe there used to be a little more of. So I think it is definitely easier for people to request modifications and even just find things that are modified at restaurants. So definitely don't be afraid to speak up for yourself and request modifications as needed. Even calling like local restaurants and asking if they will do things like cook your low protein pasta. I know a lot of people do that. I have patients that do that and it works really well. And then when you're attending social gatherings, if you are able to bring something, you can bring something that, can be for everyone, but that you can have as well. Or, if that's not the case, if you're not bringing something, tips that I had was always have snacks on hand that I knew I could eat in case there was nothing there, or also try to eat something beforehand so that you're not starving and tempted by higher protein foods. But, I think obviously there might be some adjustments that you need to make, but I think attending social gatherings and restaurants are completely doable. You just have to, and it might take some time to get you more comfortable, more to a place where you're more comfortable with asking for those things. But I definitely think that people can get there, and it's something that is, widely acceptable now.
Thank you. Connor, how about you?
First of all, so you can basically find any restaurant's menu online. So what I've done is I've just looked ahead. I've looked at what I can have. So when I get there, I already have an order that I want instead of scouring through a menu and finding one thing that's PKU. Also, like someone else said, just get comfortable with asking for modifications. Lots of restaurants will do that. So just ask and they'll probably just help it,
Great. Allie, how about you?
Asking for modifications, managing PKU at social outings, it's not something I've quite mastered yet. I have a lot of anxiety surrounding food. And so I've had like many a panic attack in a restaurant. And I always do the thing where I look ahead at the menu and my friends will look at it with me and they'll be like, okay, what can Allie have? But there's always an expectation and kind of a sadness when you're like, oh, it's okay. Like they've got fries, they've got salad, like I'll be okay. I'll eat that. And they're like, oh, no, you deserve a full. I'm like, that is a full meal. I'm okay, I swear. And that results in a lot of like, and I just haven't mastered asking for modifications. So I'm not the best at it. But social outings where it's like I meet up with friends, I can always bring my own stuff and not have to worry about it like that way. But I've eaten many a fry in my day, many a salad. Yeah.
And Matt, how about you?
Well, that is the PKU meal, French fries and salad. So, and we are comfortable with that most of the time. So I agree. I think everything that's been said is perfect. And plan ahead was kind of what I was thinking ahead of time. Just plan ahead. Looking at the menu again, that is much more widely available. That's when I was Connor's age, that was not available. It was. You have to think about where you're going ahead of time and what are the possibilities you could even possibly have. And you knew you could always fall back on French fries and whatever. You have this without cheese or something along those lines. And there is a comfort level in asking for those things. And there are many times I didn't want to do it either. And I just went with the simple thing, and people see me eat it many times and left it alone. But I think planning ahead is a way to comfort that. And you know what, when it's social gatherings and it's not at a restaurant, there were many times I just knew I wasn't going to eat anything just to avoid the subject at times. Or if I knew I was going to be there a long time, I brought my own little snack that I stuck in my pocket, and most of the time nobody even knew I snacked on. But other times I got it out and just snacked with everybody else. So yeah, plan ahead, really.
And Lily, how about you?
I think a lot's been said. One thing that I typically do, in sort of close to what Brittany was saying with bringing snacks, I will typically bring extra formula as well, because that helps to fill me up quite a bit. And then I think it's, from what I've heard, it's very common to have anxiety or just issues about this topic. And I've always wondered why. And I think it's probably has to do with how things are like always different for the person with PKU. And so a lot of times with my family, they always just really wanted, to help. And so I think that for me, there was a point in, not speaking up about the restaurant, but speaking up to like family or friends and saying, hey, I've got this. Because a lot of times my anxiety came from, oh, mom, dad, sister, this friend, all trying to do this for me, or like speaking up for me, or like trying to talk to the restaurant people for me. And that was a lot of anxiety for me, because number one, I wanted to do it more on the down low, and number two, it didn't give me a chance to use my words. And so I think speaking up to even your family and being like, hey, I know you're really excited about this restaurant. I know you're really excited about this social gathering, and you really want to help me, but I really want to practice speaking up for myself and figuring out this, navigating this on my own this time. And that was really hard for me, but I learned that it actually brought my anxiety down a lot when I could just handle it on my own, and it didn't have to be a big deal. And I could choose, like, if I just wanted that salad and fries, or if I wanted to have the more in-depth conversations about other alternatives. So I think that's another aspect of the anxiety that maybe some people feel as well. And so I just wanted to bring that to light too, because it doesn't have to be a big thing with tons of people involved, which I'm from an Italian family. So they all like wanted me to eat and everything, have all this good food. And so I think just saying, hey, I want to try doing this on my own. I want to try to navigate this on my own and see how it goes, And a lot of times that was really respected, and it went really well, and it helped to bring my anxiety down with that whole topic. So I hope that helps a little.
Oh, this is great. It's so illuminating to hear all the different perspectives, and it's really appreciated. So question 5 is, what advice do you have for managing PKU with a busy schedule? And Connor, we'll start with you, since you are a busy high school student.
Preparation is key. I will tell you that. I have a welding academy, and every night before I go there, I make a lunch for myself, because there's like restaurants nearby, but none of them have anything for PKU. So I just pack myself a lunch and just eat it. That's really all I can say from my personal experience, though. I'm not really a very busy person in the summer, so.
Fair enough. Allie, how about you?
So I started college this past year, and I have been struggling with that. I haven't quite mastered how to handle PKU with a busy schedule just yet. But when I was in high school, we would have the formula at the nurse's office, and I would go down there twice a day, chug it, and go back to class. And I found what really helps while I'm in college and while I'm working through the summer is routine. as well as preparation, like Connor said. Every night packing yourself a lunch, every morning getting up, brushing your teeth, making your formula, and going out for the day. That's what I've found like helps me the best, but I'm still learning to do it on my own. So
Lily?
For me, I have fell in love with the weekend prep. So I tend to spend one day out of my weekend, hopefully not the whole day, but normally yes, preparing like all my lunches ahead of time. And that involves, you know, obviously the grocery list, the shopping, actually making the food, all the calculations and everything, having everything pre-measured. So it's all in my fridge. I don't have to think about it. Any day of the week for work, I just pull it out and it's already calculated and I don't have to think at all, and it's wonderful. And then for dinners, I like to do, you know, some of that prep on the weekend, but still I enjoy cooking. And so in the evenings, I'll cook more. But for lunches, it really has helped me to have that kind of all set to go. And I definitely agree with Allie about routine and schedule, especially when you're busy. I need all my formula, and I sometimes need more than regular because that gives me my energy and it helps my brain stay strong. So making sure that I get my formula throughout my day, many times a day. I have formula like 4 to 5 times a day to just keep my energy, you know, solid through the day, not really any dips. Because I've noticed that if you only have a couple times a day, you're going up and down energy wise, and it's very frustrating when you're busy. So I tend to have smaller amounts spread through the day to try to keep my energy level the same, which has been really nice. So I think doing a lot of the meal prep on the weekend, prepping calculations, all of that, because calculations can take a while. Thankfully, there's how much fee now, so it's not as in depth, but it used to be all by hand with the book. So glad that doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, that's been the hugest part for me, especially with, you know, I have a full-time job. I'm getting a full-time in school too. And so it's just a lot, especially with wanting to get exercise in as well. I've noticed that that's really hard, but it's also really important with PKU. I feel 10 times better if I've exercised that day. It helps boost my energy, keep my levels lower. And so finding all of the organization and routine that I can has been helping to find that time for exercise, and then making sure to have formula after the exercise as well. So those are my tips.
Great, thank you. Matt, what do you have to share?
Well, as a result of being on Palynziq, I will say that managing my PKU time at this point is it's not. I just don't spend any time on it right now, which is great. Now, that was not the same right after college and during college, and that you know, Allie said one of the words that I was going to say. It takes discipline, it takes routine, and you know, getting in a routine is definitely going to help anything, especially when it comes to managing your PKU. You know, for me, it was drinking my formula at the same time every day, ready to go. You know, preparing it ahead of time. For me, meals, my planning of meals was more when I would go to the grocery store. I would plan it out at the grocery before I go to the grocery store and know what I'm going to get and know when I'm going to use it and what meals I'm going to make together. You know, so it was for me, it was planning ahead that way, and knowing that what I was going to shop with. So it's just making, for me, doing things over and over the same way is big. It was very helpful. And once you got in that routine, for me, it was, some days were easier than others, but it became pretty simple for me when I did that. Now, there's always the outlier that disrupts it, but you have to plan for that and be ready. And it comes back to that discipline. You got to be ready to get back on plan. So,
thanks, Matt. Brittany?
So I think this is going to kind of reiterate a lot of what other people said, because I definitely share a lot of the same thoughts there. So this actually applies to me for both prior to Palynziq and now post Palynziq. And what I mean by that is, you know, as Matt said, obviously with Palynziq, you don't really have to worry about, you know, exceeding fee or things like that. And there's a lot less to worry about. However, at the same time, you know, when I started Palynziq, I was 25, 26. So I had, you know, been on a pretty restricted diet up until then. So I kind of had to relearn how to eat and how to get enough protein in was now my new problem. Although, you know, I didn't mind having that problem versus the other. So that was something that both now post Palynziq and pre Palynziq, what really the two things whenever I'm the most successful, it's, you know, getting in a good routine and preparation. Definitely, you know, I think meal prep or having things ready is helpful, because, you know, when you have a busy schedule, if you need to grab something quick and you don't have things prepared, then obviously, you know, sometimes you might just grab whatever's easiest or quickest and not necessarily, you know, what's good. So that's why, you know, preparation is so key, or just having quick things on hand that are good to eat. You know, if you're busy and just need to grab something, you can. So having those things on hand and trying to get in a good routine. But, you know, at the same time, you know, I do think routines help, but keeping in mind that, you know, making sure that you are able to be flexible if things change a little bit. So just have things in mind, and having that preparation will help with that as well.
Thank you. This is great advice, I think, for everyone, even if you don't have PKU. So thank you. So our last question for everyone is, what is something positive in your life as a result of having PKU? And Allie, why don't you start for us?
Okay, first I would like to say I'm very jealous of you, Lily. You seem very type A and like you've got your life together. And I know I'm an adult, but I'd like to be you when I grow up. Getting that out of the way, I would say the best thing that I've received from having PKU is a very close-knit community, and I think a lot of people here will agree with me on that. I've been to a couple PKU summer camps in my day, and I've met one of my best friends there, Kai, and I talk to her all the time, and like I've met other friends as well. Like, you really bond with other people in a way that you don't bond with just anyone. You know, like when you meet someone who's your age with PKU, it's just almost sparks fly. Like, you've been through a lot of the same hardships, I guess, if you would like to call it that, almost the same life, kind of, with the doctor's appointments. And of course, there's always like the inside PKU jokes, and it's always very fun. So I'd say a close-knit community is probably the best thing that I've gotten out of PKU, on top of like social awareness, because when you grow up and you like have the lunch at your public school, like the lunch ladies make your weird food and then you have to eat that in front of people, and people are like, why does your food look like that? And you're like, because I eat it. And you've been like, not necessarily ridiculed, but you have been bullied for the things you eat, like the stuff you do, you know. I think you're much more likely to spend your time defending the little guy, and I think that's something that everyone should learn. So I'm glad that PKU kind of instilled that in me from birth.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. Connor, how about you?
Allie really hit the nail on the head there. The community is definitely the best part of having PKU. Like, Camp Fever is one of the camps that I sometimes go to. Whenever I go there, it's easily the highlight of the year. Having all these people that are like, so they have this like one connection to you, like that we all share, is really nice to have because we can all relate in our struggles. And I feel like that's something that I'm really happy to have.
Lily?
I hate to say it again. No. So it definitely, I'll say two things. So definitely the community. Some of my best friends have PKU, and they've helped me with my fears of the maternal PKU side of things, and watching their journey with that. But just your bond is so much different than you'd think. You can walk up to a person with PKU and have all these endless conversations just because of the experiences you've had. But then on the flip side of things, I think that PKU, when I really became aware of I have this thing, right? And learned about what would happen if my parents hadn't followed all the rules and all of this. It's honestly why I became a special education teacher, because I had these opened eyes of these kids with special needs, these kids with different needs than, anybody else. Like, everybody has their thing. And I think that with special education, I learned that could have been me. I could have been in that class. I could have had a lot of different experiences in my life, but I was blessed enough to have a treatment, and a lot of people with special needs don't. And so that brought the perspective of, I want to be there for those people. I want to help those people. I want to give them a voice if they don't have a voice, and I don't think I would have been as aware of that if I hadn't had PKU. I don't know if I would have seen that perspective and had that humility, And so I thank PKU for that, because it's one of the greatest joys of my life to be part of special education and special needs. And then the other thing, just, lighthearted thing, is it really does help you stay organized and be very aware of your health and very conscious of what you're putting in your body, where I know a lot of other people my age are just putting things in their body, they willy-nilly, they don't care, whatever, I'm young, but for me, I can't do that. And so I feel like somehow, in its own weird way, it's making me stronger and healthier and more conscious for my body and my overall health. So I'm appreciative of that as well.
Brittany?
So I feel like, PKU has definitely given me a lot of things. It's given me strength, resilience, empathy. Those are a lot of big things that I think PKU has helped me have more of. And it's made me a better healthcare provider because of it. And I mean, I would not be doing what I currently do if it wasn't for PKU. Obviously, I work with PKU patients. I kind of dedicated my life to doing that. So I know I deal with PKU a lot, both personally and professionally, but I really love what I do so much. And, I wouldn't have this passion if it wasn't for PKU. And that all started with, like what everyone was saying about the PKU community, starting by when I was young, going to these National PKU Alliance conferences and, speaking from the patient perspective like I am now, and wanting to do more of that, but also wanting to do more of that from the provider side as well. So, now I work with PKU and other metabolic disorders every day, and I absolutely love it. And I think PKU, obviously I have a lot that I can thank PKU for.
Matt, you will round us out here.
All right, thank you. I think one of the things that PKU's helped me be, I think it's helped me be a stronger person, and without knowing it, because we've all mentioned different things that we've gone through with PKU, whether it's having to explain over and over to certain people, or start thinking to yourself, why do I have this, and why are others not like me, and things like that. So it does make you stronger in that. And one of the phrases I coined actually in high school once I realized, I was perfectly fine with who I was and having PKU, and it wasn't defining me and all that, is it bothers other people more than it bothers me. It's always been that way. When you have to sit there and explain for the 6th time to the same person why you are doing what you're doing, it does bother them. And you know what? When I sat down at the lunch table, more people actually started the conversation. Hey, let me tell you about Matt. It wasn't me bringing it up. It's always the others bringing it up. And so it helped me be a stronger person, and just in that aspect. And it's given me so many different opportunities that I never thought I would have. And I just mentioned I just became more involved in the PKU community in the last 7 or 8 years, and I missed out on a lot. Just by doing that has been such a great opportunity. I was in the clinical trial for Palynziq. So I really enjoy just doing things with and for the PKU community. It's not something I've been a part of very long, but it's something I enjoy doing. And as a result of Palynziq, I'm on the speakers bureau for Palynziq. So I'm able to go share my experience with that, which I would never have been able to do across the country. And so it's given me opportunities to help others with PKU that I never thought I'd have. I enjoy every bit of this. I enjoy coming in and asking questions. It's the off-the-wall questions that I enjoy the most, actually, sometimes. So it's just, I enjoy just sharing experiences, talking to others with PKU, and just being a part of all this. So, and honestly, something I've said recently, because since I've been involved in this in the last 7 or 8 years, and I remember I'm 40 now, I've learned more about PKU probably in the last 6 or 7 years than I have in my entire life. I mean, there are things that I wish I could go back and tell my 14-year-old self that say, hey, you need to stop doing this. And so, it's a constant learning. It's a constant learning situation for all of us that have PKU. You may think you have it down, but there's always something else to learn and something to better yourself on. So again, just enjoy all the opportunities that it brought my way.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your answers to our prepared questions. And now we're going to turn to a live Q&A and take some questions from the audience. Okay, welcome everyone. We are live. We've gotten some great questions and I'm just going to throw them out to the group. We have about 10 minutes. And one of the questions we got is looking back on your maybe teen years and growing up as a kid, what things did you think that your parents did that was helpful for you now that you're a young adult, or what things do you think would have been helpful for your parents to help you do when you were young? So I'm going to throw this out to Brittany to start off.
Sure. So first, I do definitely agree, and I'm sorry, I can't remember if it was Allie or Lilly that said this initially, but it was mentioned in the previous, in the panel, the other questions, that having your child involved in things related to PKU management is helpful, and I totally agree with that. I think that's something that my parents did from when I was young, that getting me involved is one of the things that made me feel like this was just kind of like a normal part of life. So just as a example, they would have a little wheel on the fridge that had, the total amount of protein I would have for the day. So even though I was too young to completely count it on myself, it was still kind of like a fun little thing for me, where they would say, oh, you had 2 grams, so go spin your wheel. So I'd spin the wheel 2 grams. So it was kind of like a visual of how much I would have left for the day. So little things like that, just getting kids involved from a young age, or as they get older. I have done presentations on transitions before. So like, going into school and going away to college, because those can be tough times. So being able to be involved so that you can have that independence when you're older is really important. And I know that can be hard from the parent perspective, because I know my mom sometimes had a hard time letting go and letting me kind of do things on my own. But, you know, we can do it on our own. It's just, you know, sometimes I think, you know, you have to give us that chance, because trust me, I know there were times where I would maybe not make my formula because I knew if I didn't, my mom would do it for me. So if you, you know, get involved from early on and you're able to do things independently, that really helps. And you know, like I said in the panel too, just making it a normal part of life and not like something that holds you back. You know, it's still, you still can accomplish all the goals that you want to. Obviously, you do have to manage PKU well to be able to, you know, accomplish everything you want, but you still can do what you want and you don't have to be held back. So those were like, I think the two main things that my parents did, you know, help with getting me involved in my own care, but then also, you know, making it just a normal part of life and not something that holds me back.
Thanks, Brittany. We've had another question, and Connor, I'm going to send this one over to you. And it's from a parent of some young kids who don't necessarily like eating vegetables. So what, you know, as you were growing up and as you're a teenager here, you know, what tips or tricks might you have for a parent to help their kids like eating their veggies?
So this is actually a, well, can you guys hear me? Okay, good. So this is something that my dad actually said at a cooking event. He said if you give it like a name that sounds a lot cooler than cauliflower, name it like dragon marshmallow, something crazy that it'll get their attention, and they'll be like, wow, this is actually not bad. So it's worked for someone probably, so it might work for you.
Awesome, I love that. Get creative with your naming for dinner. For dinner, we're having dragon marshmallows, dragon something, whatever it is. That sounds way better than cauliflower. I agree. Another question we got was, how do you transition to living with a partner or roommate who is a meat eater? So Matt, I'm going to send that over to you.
Well, you may not get the answer you want on this, because I even had in my wedding vows that they made us say what we loved about each other at the wedding, of course, in the wedding and in my wedding vows, and I'm choosing you because you don't eat much meat. So she wasn't a big meat eater anyway. So she was pretty comfortable eating a lot of and I was doing more veggies and fruits than low protein foods. I grew up more on veggies and fruits. So it wasn't a huge deal for her when we got together. So she had to learn to cook a few other things. She actually called my mom and asked how to make low protein bread, which I never asked her to do, but she did anyway. And so she was comfortable doing that, but she, like I said, she was not a big meat eater. She's still not a big meat eater. Now that I'm on Palynziq, we still don't eat a lot of meat in the household. The kids, we do it more for the kids, honestly, than anything. So what's interesting, being on Palynziq, I'm still not a meat eater, really. I'm not a big fan. But I'll still go out and make sure I cook extras for the kids when it comes to meat. I want to make sure they don't have PKU. We go out, we will cook them steaks and hamburgers and things like that. And Jen and I will still eat most of the same things that we've always done. We just make additional sides, you know. I'll eat obviously a little more, but than I used to. But so yeah, it again, probably not the answer they were looking for, because my wife's not a big meat eater, but it worked out. We learned to work with each other when it comes to food.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. Allie, I'm going to have you answer this next question. And it is when your Phe levels are a little bit high and you are feeling kind of that fog, if you have a way to describe it so that people who don't have PKU can try and better understand what it's like.
The way I describe it is mostly just an inability to pay attention to anything. And then also, like, the go-to description I have is like, you know, when you're sick and everything just feels foggy and you literally cannot like focus on anything. All you can think about is, oh my God, I'm sick. I feel awful. Like, you're not thinking about literally anything else that's placed in front of you. That's pretty much how I explain it. And obviously high levels come with other side effects, such as like anxiety is the one that I get like the hardest. So those are like two very fun things to experience that I then have to be like, I'm sorry, I'm not like, I swear I'm like trying to listen to you. I swear I'm trying to pay attention. I ate something bad, or I didn't make my formula the other day, and now I'm just in the clouds.
Thank you. That is really, really helpful. We have another question about transitioning. So when you're a teenager and you transition to college, or maybe you're a college student and you transition to living on your own and starting a new job, what advice do you have for folks with PKU at those transition moments? So I'm going to swing back to Brittany, if you'll answer that one for us.
Yeah, this is a really good question, because this is such a good topic, like I was saying before, just transitions in general. But that, transition to college was probably, one of the more challenging times for me. I mean, because it's challenging for anyone, regardless of PKU. And then obviously you're throwing PKU in the mix and you've got more things. So, one of the most helpful things is just making sure that you can independently manage, before going off to college. So, obviously it makes it a little harder if you haven't taken over your care with PKU. So if your parents are still doing things like, refilling your meds for you, or, your formula, or making all the calls to clinic to schedule your appointments and things like that, and I say this because this is stuff that I still let my parents do a little later than I should have. So, I think that can make the transition a little more difficult if you haven't been completely independent yet. But if you work towards, managing your diet, then when you kind of go off to college on your own and you're already at a place where you feel comfortable managing your diet, that can help. It's, not the end of the world if you're going off to college and you're not at that place yet. I think, a few things that were helpful to me were, one, just finding a new support system. So I was very open about PKU with my roommates and friends, and that was really helpful, because then I had, even though I was no longer at home with my home friends and my family that were very supportive my whole life, now I had a new support system at college. So that was one of the things that was really helpful. And just, trying to use your resources as well. So, use clinic as your resource, of course, but also resources that the NPKUA have and other people to help with things like advocating for yourself in college. If you need accommodations for food, my college would allow me to keep like my pancake mix or things like that in the cafeteria. So all those things can help make the transition a little smoother.
All right, thank you, Brittany. We're actually out of time for our panel, and I will say this happens every conference because this is such an amazing panel to hear from our teens and young adults with PKU. It's definitely the highlight for me. So I want to thank all of you for your willingness to be here today and to share your stories. And I'll ask our panelists if they wouldn't mind jumping in the chat and helping answer some of the other questions that came in, because we didn't quite get a chance to cover all of them. And thank you, everyone. We will now be on a short break before the conference continues.